Kristina Jovic, once crowned one of the most stunning women in the 2007 Miss Switzerland contest, is now back in the spotlight, but for the most tragic reason. 17 years later, her life took a dark turn. It all started with a call from the kindergarten. Kristina hadn't shown up to pick up her kids like she normally would. Her parents were in a panic, while surprisingly, her husband didn't seem to care at all about her sudden disappearance. Since the authorities wouldn't act without waiting 24 hours, Kristina's father took matters into his own hands. What he discovered at his daughter's home was an unimaginable nightmare. So what really happened? Who exactly was Kristina Jovic, and what role did her husband play in this dark mystery? Welcome back to I Felt the Dark. After covering the case of Hannah's disappearance in Virginia, today we're heading to Switzerland, where Kristina's disappearance, a former Miss Switzerland, has turned into one of the most tragic cases in recent memory. Her father, acting as a detective on his own, had long suspected something sinister about his son-in-law. Let's dive into this chilling mystery together. This time, we're diving into the life of Kristina Jovic and her husband, Mark Rybin, and the tragedy that unfolded between them. Oh, and by the way, if you're into crime stories or dark mysteries, consider subscribing. It really helps me out. Now, without further ado, grab your coffee and let's get into it. This is the case of Kristina Jovic. Before we dive into the grim details of this case, let's get to know this amazing country. Switzerland, known for its mountains, lakes, charming villages, and the towering peaks of the Alps. Honestly, it feels like they have more ski resorts and hiking trails than they do people. Speaking of which, around 9 million folks call this place home, with Bern as the capital and Zurich as the biggest city. Now, as the most populated city, if you travel about an hour north from Bern or an hour west from Zurich, you'll stumble upon a town right on the border of France, Germany, and Switzerland. This cute little place is called Basel. Don't confuse it with basil, that tasty herb you find in pasta sauces and salads. Basel is very much Switzerland, and it's a lovely town to visit, with its Gothic-style cathedral, red sandstone buildings, and the Rhine River flowing right through. I know we say this a lot, but honestly, you wouldn't think anything evil could happen in such a sunny, cheerful spot. But unfortunately, today's case is going to wipe away all that charming image of Switzerland. In the southwest of Basel, there's a small municipality called Bingen, and on the night of February 13, 2024, a horrifying discovery shocked the entire town and left everyone full of questions. It all started the day before when two grandparents got a call from their grandchildren's kindergarten. Apparently, their daughter Kristina, who used to be a model and is now a successful entrepreneur, didn't show up to pick up her kids from school. Naturally, Kristina's parents were confused and thought something was off. Kristina was known to be a loving and responsible mother. What made things even stranger was that her husband, Mark, wasn't answering his phone, even though he was supposed to be at home. So, what was really going on? The grandparents decided to pick up their grandkids themselves and head straight to Kristina's house, where she lived with her husband. When they arrived, they found Mark chilling at home, acting like nothing was wrong, even though he didn't pick up the kids. What made them even more suspicious was that Kristina was nowhere to be found, and Mark didn't seem bothered at all. Mark claimed he had no idea where Kristina was, and bizarrely, he offered Kristina's dad a drink. Imagine, while the grandparents were freaking out about their missing daughter, Mark was busy making tea and casually chatting. "He always does that," Kristina's dad later said in court. "Whenever we'd visit, he'd offer drinks and make small talk." Mark even said, "Oh, don't worry. Kristina's probably just busy. You know, she's a career woman." Mark was chatting with Kristina's parents like everything was completely normal, just another regular day. After a while, her parents said goodbye to their grandkids and wished Mark a good night. But Kristina's dad isn't the type to just walk away and let things slide. His worry for his daughter was sky high, so instead of going home, he decided to take action. His suspicion at this point was probably higher than global warming levels. He decided to thoroughly check every corner of the house. Christina and Mark lived in a pretty big, fancy house in Bingen with plenty of rooms and hidden spaces, so it took Christina's dad quite a while to search everything. Eventually, he made his way down to the laundry room, tucked away in the basement. Funny enough, Mark didn't seem to notice that his father-in-law was basically snooping around his mansion. That laundry room felt more like an isolated bunker, with thick concrete walls and a heavy steel door. When Christina's dad finally walked in, he saw a few large trash bags in the corner, and immediately the smell of blood hit him, making his stomach churn. His heart started racing as his eyes locked onto something terrifying, strands of long blonde hair sticking out from one of the bags. His fear spiked, but his curiosity pushed him forward. With shaking hands, he opened the bag. And as you can guess, ta-ra, boom. You know what's in there, right? Just hearing about it makes me emotional. I feel like I've lost a piece of my soul. Tragically, what he saw inside the bag was his daughter's severed head. Completely shocked and terrified, he ran out of the house, screaming for help. Not long after, a heartbroken father's call was received by the police, reporting that a woman had been brutally murdered and dismembered. When the police arrived at Mark's house, it was pretty obvious that Christina Jovic was dead. Yeah, that's how psychopaths operate, right? And even more obvious, her husband Mark was most likely the one to blame and the prime suspect. Now, Christina's parents, family, and friends were hit with immense grief, while the outside world was buzzing with curiosity about what really happened. This horrifying case was broadcast all across Europe, and even spread to other parts of the world about the brutal murder of this former Switzerland model. With all this shocking news, let's dive into the lives of Christina and Mark and see what led to her tragic end. Starting with Christina, she was a pretty remarkable woman, a sexy lady with a body that surely caught many men's eyes, right? I mean, who wouldn't be envious of having such a stunning wife? But Christina wasn't just about her looks. She was far from your average 9-to-5 office worker. In fact, her career was super fascinating. From a successful model to a businesswoman who inspired many young women. Yeah, a lot of them probably got inspired to become models or maybe even moonlight on OnlyFans for some extra cash, right? Even though she was from Bingen and spent most of her life in Bern, Christina had deep family roots in Serbia. No wonder her looks stood out and probably had a lot of guys mesmerized. Haha. Just kidding, guys. As Christina grew older, she won the Miss Northwest Switzerland contest in 2003, before advancing to the finals of Miss Switzerland in 2007. On top of that, she collected various other awards in the beauty industry. So yeah, you could say she was conventionally attractive. But wait, her talents didn't stop there. Oh no, they actually shined even more as she got a little older for the modeling world. Well, old by the industry standards, right? Christina started her own business where she trained young women to become models for big shows and world-class runways. On top of that, she helped newcomers prepare for beauty pageants and castings. But that wasn't enough for Christina. She was a multi-talented woman who couldn't sit still. While building her business, she also worked as an IT consultant for Google. I mean, can you imagine? Going from high heels to coding and algorithms. On her business Instagram, Catwalk Coach, she branded herself as a high heel expert, motivator, entrepreneur, and of course an awesome mom. She offered private coaching sessions for clients, public classes at her studio, and even workshops on how to wear heels without killing your feet. Now that's an art, right? Another company she ran promoted confidence, femininity, and body positivity in the Basel area. On her website, she described herself as a model, Google recruiter, Miss Switzerland finalist, Miss Switzerland manager, and catwalk coach. Oh, and she even trained women who supposedly wanted to make a career on OnlyFans or as adult influencers on Twitter. Not to mention, she also coached those dreaming of becoming personal assistants to sultans in Dubai. Yep, that's the modeling world these days, super flexible. Christina's clients weren't just anyone. They included big names like Mercedes-Benz, HP, and Philips. In short, she made a smooth transition from modeling to catwalk coaching, all while inspiring the younger generation who dream of not only conquering the fashion world but also the adult entertainment scene. Yeah, life really is full of surprises, right? I mean, if she can go from heels to coding, who knows what's next? Maybe she'll start motivating people to crush it on TikTok or become an Instagram influencer. On top of that, she trains future Miss Switzerland contestants to follow in her footsteps and coaches other businesswomen to walk with confidence, both in their professional and personal lives. 'Cause hey, who doesn't need a little catwalk training to look cooler in a meeting, right? She's a strong woman who's dedicated her life to empowering other women. But wait, there's more. Besides being a model, entrepreneur, and consultant, Christina is also a proud wife and mom of 2 young daughters, Vera CLA born in 2020 and Kira Sophie born in 2021. Basically, she's a superwoman, balancing fashion, business, and kids like it's nothing. If there were an Oscar for most multitasking mom, she'd definitely win. From all the photos online, it's clear how much she loves her family. Christina's a kind, warm mom who's as beautiful on the inside as she is on the outside. Seriously, this isn't just my opinion, it's what all her friends say. So how do I see her? From the outside, Christina seems confident, smart, sexy, disciplined, and super loyal to her family. Honestly, I totally get why so many people admire her. Not only is she gorgeous inside and out, but she also gives us all some major inspiration for living a balanced, successful life just like hers. Although many of us see Christina in a very positive light, the same can't be said about her husband. I mean, don't get me wrong, he has some fancy friends and Christina loves him, but a lot of people around him see Mark as a spoiled guy who's quick to anger. So let's talk about Mark, how he got into Christina's life, and unfortunately, how he's also going to end her life. Mark Rybin, who's 41, 3 years older than Christina, is a handsome guy with an athletic body, even though he's in his 40s. He was born into a rich family, so it's no surprise his life looks pretty easy, right? Especially thanks to his dad, who basically set him up to live like a millionaire and become a lawyer. Before becoming a leader of change, yeah, that's his super cool title, he was an officer in the Swiss Air Force, studied at the University of St. Gallen, and apparently continued his studies at Stanford University. For Mark, going to Stanford with the cost of living in California? No big deal, right? On top of that, Mark runs his own business focusing on expertise in lean, agile, and continuous improvement. He describes himself as a goal-oriented entrepreneur. Well, if his goal was to put people to sleep while he talks. According to him, life is all about people and sharing, though I think what he means is sharing misery, because that's what he seems to do. He just didn't explain that part too clearly. Even based on his Twitter posts, Mark seems like a really boring guy who comes off as cold when communicating, according to his friends. It's pretty far from the persona he shows on social media. His life seems pretty flat, and his corporate job just adds to the boredom of his daily routine. No wonder people think, Mark, you'd be more interesting if you just kept quiet. After a few months of dating Christina, Mark finally decided to pop the question before anyone else could snatch her up. I mean, who could blame him, right? In 2017, they started building a family together, and eventually Mark and Christina got married. Their wedding looked absolutely gorgeous, held in a castle overlooking some hills and fields, definitely the kind of view that would make you feel like you're in a rom-com. Plus, as we all know, they were blessed with 2 beautiful daughters. Everything looked perfect from the outside, or at least that's what social media made us think. You could find loads of photos of them online, looking all lovey-dovey, picnics in the park, cuddling on the floor, kissing in romantic spots, candid selfies at home, and luxury vacations abroad. Even Christina's fans were feeling a little jealous. Who wouldn't want a life like that? Married to a millionaire and living in style. Ah, what a dream, right? But as always, things aren't as simple as they seem. for gusto. Behind all of this, Christina's friends weren't too impressed with Mark, especially in the months leading up to her death. One friend remembered how they went through a rough patch for a few months. Mark wasn't shy about acting spoiled in public, yelling at Christina over whatever issues were going on at home. I'm not sure what exactly they were fighting about, but it didn't sound like something small. Police were even called to their house once things escalated into violence. According to witness statements and friends, one friend mentioned, Mark started showing obsessive and compulsive tendencies when it came to his kids. They'd often argue in front of their friends, but their pals tried to cover it up so it wouldn't become public. Christina, on the other hand, felt increasingly pressured and said Mark was incredibly stubborn, something that was super obvious during their kids' birthday celebrations.
Don't miss this exciting story. Watch this video until the end to get all the surprising detail. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. That way you won't miss out on any other interesting videos. Join our community and enjoy various exciting stories every week.
A lot of their friends saw the tension, but sadly, they chose not to get involved in their relationship drama. So, even though everything seemed perfect from the outside, the reality was far from it. Maybe they needed a little catwalk training to walk side by side without kicking each other, huh? When Mark started distancing himself from family and friends to have private meetings, very few knew that he was hiding a much darker side beneath that always perfect, handsome face. We know this because it came straight from their friends, as well as testimonies from Mark's ex before he married Christina. Turns out, his ex was pretty traumatized after dating him and knew all too well how bad Mark's behavior was toward women. That's why she turned down his proposal and decided to break up with him instead of marrying and living with an abusive guy. Mark's ex even gave testimony to the prosecution about several instances of violence Mark inflicted on her. One of the incidents happened in April 2016, right before he met and married Christina in 2017. One of his cruel actions included running over his ex's foot with his car during an outburst, and even threatening to throw her out of the car while speeding down the road. There's also an allegation that Mark choked his ex and shoved her hard against a wall. Apparently, he often lost control during their arguments, and sometimes it turned physical, like hitting or choking. So, Christina wasn't Mark's first victim. Without knowing any of this, Christina kept sharing beautiful photos on social media, believing that Mark was the perfect husband who would never hurt her. She described him as her rock in some old photos and proudly announced that she was pregnant with their second child. Even just a few months before her tragic death, she shared a family photo with the caption, "Captured my world." How ironic and tragic that the world she captured would end so suddenly. Alright, so technically we're supposed to consider Mark innocent until proven guilty, but the evidence we have, along with a mountain of testimonies, pretty much suggests that Mark isn't exactly the kind of guy you'd see starring in a detergent commercial based on what his friends have witnessed. But seriously, what actually happened to Christina? While the case hasn't fully wrapped up in court yet, we've got to stay a little skeptical. Can't jump to conclusions just yet, right? But here's what we know so far. For starters, Mark claimed that he didn't kill Christina at all. He said it was self-defense. Yep, according to him, Christina was the one who acted out, and he was just protecting himself. According to the police report from his interrogation after the arrest, Mark tried to sell that story like it was some clearance sale. He was basically playing the victim card here, like a soap opera plot twist, but unfortunately, it seems like the audience isn't really buying it. Maybe he thought this was his audition to be the hero, but yeah, the evidence is telling a different story. So, here's the deal. Mark initially said he found Christina in the laundry room and freaked out, which led him to cut up her body in a panic. But once he realized there was no way to dodge the forensic evidence, he switched gears and admitted to killing her, claiming it was all in self-defense. According to him, Christina came at him with a knife. However, the medical and forensic experts weren't buying it. Based on the marks on her neck, they concluded that she was strangled first. And trust me, that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what the autopsy revealed. The autopsy report uncovered even more disturbing details. Showed that Christina was decapitated using a saw, a knife, and even garden shears. Mark also broke her hip joint and disarticulated it, which means he separated her bones from their joints. Investigators found out that while he was cutting up her body, he had a few YouTube videos playing on his iPhone. Interestingly, though, he refused to give the cops his password, which means he probably had something to hide. Oh, and he carefully removed her uterus. Yep, that was the only organ taken out, which led experts to believe that this whole thing wasn't just murder, but maybe Mark had some serious mental issues. That's not wild enough, get this. According to the court, Mark then shoved some of Christina's body parts into a high-powered industrial blender, where he pretty much blended them into mush. The parts that didn't make it into the blender? He dissolved those in chemicals. The bits that didn't meet such a grisly fate showed signs of blunt force trauma before she died. This included cuts on her cheek, under her eyebrow, and on her nose, bruises on her lower right leg and feet, and more bruises on her shoulder blades and the back of her head. Upon closer inspection, they even found some of her hair had been ripped out. To top it all off, the forensic evidence at the scene suggested that most of this horrific stuff went down in the laundry room. So basically, he spent a few hours dealing with his wife's body like it was just another Tuesday. Then Mark carried on like nothing happened, playing it cool as if happiness was just around the corner. Not only that, but he even looked Christina's dad straight in the eye, shared a drink with him, and casually said that his wife would be back soon. But as we know, her dad wasn't just worried. He was relentless because, well, that's what dads do. After searching the house thoroughly, he eventually found his daughter's head. Yeah, probably the absolute worst thing you could ever find. Like seriously, can you imagine? Between discovering his daughter's head and the police arriving, he actually confronted Mark about it. And get this, Mark acted genuinely shocked, like he really didn't expect anyone to find it. Then, believe it or not, while being arrested and hauled off, he had the nerve to tell his in-laws that they'd overstayed their welcome and things would have been so much easier if they hadn't found his wife's remains. Yeah, you think? As for why Mark killed his wife, that's still a bit of a mystery. Without expert opinions on this, we're left with way too many interpretations. But hey, at least we've got some kind of confession, and we do know from Christina's friends that she was planning to divorce him. So chances are that's what set this psycho off. And shockingly enough, after being arrested, Mark actually had the audacity to apply for release from custody at the Basel Landschaft Compulsory Measures Court not long after. Like seriously? Mark's repeated attempts to get himself released after what he did to the woman he claimed to love left the people of Switzerland scratching their heads in confusion. I mean, this rich kid just wouldn't quit, constantly trying to convince the court to set him free. After his first request was denied, he went ahead and appealed to the cantonal court, which, surprise, surprise, also said, nope. Then, just for good measure, he tried again at the federal court and, shocker, they rejected him too. It's like he thought he was in some twisted version of third time's the charm. The investigation has made it pretty clear that Mark's mental state is far from normal. He's displaying some major criminal energy, a glaring lack of empathy, and an ice-cold cruelty that would make a penguin shiver. His attempts to cover up his wife's death and then act like nothing happened in front of her dad? Yeah, that definitely screams sociopath with a sprinkle of sadism, as one of Christina's friends pointed out. The craziest part? He didn't show a single ounce of remorse. I mean, how far gone do you have to be to act completely emotionless? There's no doubt Mark is heading to trial for his wife's murder, but we'll have to wait and see if he's found guilty and how long his sentence will be. Since Switzerland doesn't have the death penalty, the minimum sentence for murder is 10 years with a maximum of life in prison. But here's the kicker, even a life sentence in Switzerland comes with the possibility of parole after 15 years. So yeah, there's a chance Mark could be walking free someday, which only adds to the pain Christina's family has to bear. Oh, and let's not forget, if he ever does get out, he'll probably try to sell some story about how he's changed. Yeah, right, just like his first two appeals, we're not buying it. There's currently an ongoing custody battle over who's going to care for Christina's kids now that she's gone. It's like World War III, but instead of fighting over land, it's about who gets the kids. On one side, you've got Mark's family, wealthy and capable, sure, so they might seem like a reasonable option. But on the other side, you've got Christina's parents and her sister, who are teaming up to give the kids a safe, warm, and loving home far away from trauma. Meanwhile, Mark's sister is swooping in to claim custody herself. Again, wealthy family perks. She's even arguing that Christina's parents are too old to care for the kids. So yeah, it's turning into quite the legal showdown, with Mark's sister backed by their millionaire father and his lawyer buddies. Poor Christina's family, they're really up against it. Honestly, I'd argue that Mark's disgusting actions should automatically disqualify his family from having any rights here. But well, money talks, and boy does it shout. That's just how the world works, unfortunately. But in reality, Christina's kids deserve to be in a home where the story of their crazy father isn't twisted into something else. Christina's family has already suffered enough pain and loss. They shouldn't have to lose their grandchildren too, on top of losing their daughter. As for Christina, let's not forget what a strong, confident, and incredible woman she was. She was full of fresh ideas, bursting with energy, and always there for her friends and family. Despite her boss lady energy, she was a loving, devoted mother who gave everything for her kids. So, while the custody battle rages on, it's clear who would want the best for those children. And spoiler alert, it's not the family backing the guy who chopped up their mother. Now they have to grow up without their amazing mom by their side. 8 months after her death, their house is completely abandoned. The furniture is still there, but the place is dark and empty. I mean, can you blame them? It's a murder house. Cue the ghost stories, right? Christina's probably already haunting that place, chilling on the couch, waiting for visitors, but hey, let's hope people bring flowers, not Ouija boards. Speaking of flowers, there's a ton of them outside the front door. The steps leading up to the house are covered in overgrown weeds, and the backyard's patio is all cracked with plants, too. The grill and kids' toys are still out there like time just froze. People really miss Christina. There's a framed photo of her, 2 crosses, little heart-shaped stones, and some drawings from her kids. It's clear she left a huge mark on everyone. One thing that stuck with me, though, one of her friends said in an interview, just because a relationship looks perfect on the outside doesn't mean it really is. So yeah, folks, stay sharp, not just for yourself, but for others too. Don't just believe it when your partner says, "We're couple goals." Check first, who knows, maybe there's a hidden agenda. For now, that's the end of our story. But honestly, I'm super curious about how this case will unfold and what else we're going to learn about Mark. What kind of plot twist is still waiting to hit us? And with that, I'll wrap up this video. Thanks so much for watching I Felt the Dark. See you in the next video.